Hello, hello, hello. Happy Monday, y'all. Happy Monday, and welcome to another episode of FPP Live, what I like to call faith, purpose, and profit. Because you need all three if you're going to go after living as the highest and best version of who God created you to be. So as you come in, number one, say hello. Hey, Alzanda. Azada, girl, please tell me if I say your name right. You may have to phonetically spell it out so I can say your name right. Hey, Renata, come on in. Now, listen, as I'm sharing, I do come back at the end to look at your comments. Let me tell you why I do that. Because, listen, I'm trying to keep all these notes in my head, and I can't keep my notes and answer your questions and do all of that at the same time. I'm not that gifted yet. At least God ain't showed me how to do that yet. So I do come at the end. So if you have questions, those of you that are here live, please, by all means, post your questions. Hey, Yolanda. And if I'm stepping on your toes, I want to know. If you're having an aha moment, I want to know that too. So we started a 6-part series 7 weeks ago because we had an interlude in between. And this is our 6th part. And our 6th part is Al Zeta. Thank you, girl. Thank you, because I'm hooked on phonics. Al Zeta. I'm going to get it right now. So listen. Tonight, we're starting the last part, the culmination of this series, and you totally will understand why. Just like I began to understand why God even dropped this in my spirit. And I'm going to tell you why this series has been 2 years in the making. So, our conversation as we end this series is, will you complete it? Will you complete it? So, why I'm asking you that question is I want you to fully get this. God created this world, but he didn't finish it because he left it for us to complete it. Y'all with me? He left it for us to partner with him to complete it. Many people think that God telling us to work or us having to work happened after the fall in the garden, and that's not true. So if you go read Genesis as we did in part 1, by the way, if you missed any of the parts of this series, I want to encourage you to go back and listen. It started, the episode number 1 was why business is important to God, which is what this series is called. You can go back and watch previous episodes or listen at fpppodcast.com. Okay. So there's 7 parts. This is the 7th. There was an interlude in between. And so I need you to understand the way I teach, one thing builds on the next. You're going to need all the parts for it to make sense. So I'm going to break down all the pieces in this episode even more so that you have clarity to move your special role forward. I see more of you are joining me. I'll shout you guys out at the end. Hello, hello. So I need you to fully understand this. Now, what I was saying, and I got distracted because I wanted to make sure you guys understood that I talked about this, but I'm digging even deeper in this episode about all the things I've talked about in this series, because now it will make sense to you. And if it doesn't, I'm going to give you some great homework, okay? So as I taught you in part 1 about creation and how God created us to work, how he put Adam and Eve in the garden to tend to it and keep it. That command came before our phenomenal sister girl Eve ate that apple or whatever that fruit was. I always think it was an apple. That happened before. So God's mandate for us to tend to the garden and keep it happened before the fall. So God always intended for us to partner with him to tend to the world and keep it. It would have been a whole different world had Eve not acted a fool. However, we've always had this mandate. So listen, how I even came about this series is when COVID first started, my prayer is always, God, what do you want me to teach the people? You know, what do you want me to share? Or what do you want me to study for me? And that's always my prayer. Sometimes it's both, sometimes it's one or the other. But daily, as I sit in quiet contemplation, I'm always asking God, what's next? What's next for me to study? What's next for me to teach? And usually what I study ends up being what I teach. So I remember this particular day, I was sitting in my office and I was trying to figure out what to teach and sitting and praying. And what kept coming in my mind was the wanted poster. You guys remember those back in the day, those wanted posters when they were recruiting people to be in the army, you know, be all you can be. Remember those commercials? And this is why I talked about the fact that God wants to deploy you for the upliftment, the creation, the upkeep, the tending to this nation. See, when I say the kingdom, many people also get confused and think I'm just talking about some spiritual, ethereal place. We live in the kingdom. The world is God's kingdom. It's up to us to play the role he created us to play, to tend to it, to keep it. That's why God gave you gifts and he wants to deploy your gifts to do that. But here's what I've learned. And again, I've been doing this 28 years. So I want you to know I'm not pointing a finger at anybody. Whatever I'm saying to you, I learned it from myself. I lived it. I studied it. And then God said, now I want you to teach it. Okay. So what happens in this thing called life is you have your own plan. So I know for me, my plan was to work in TV and film. So I went to college. By the way, when I was in college, I worked at the local TV station in San Diego. By the time I graduated from college, I became the floor director. I ran the cameras. I did lighting. I was the person that when they called makeup, I was the girl that put the makeup, the powder on people's faces. So I did a horrible job. I used to get it on men's suit. It was suits. It was horrible. But I had just about every job at KPBS in San Diego. Shout out to any of you guys that watch KPBS in San Diego. That was my first TV job. So I literally did everything. I ended up being the floor director. I'm sharing that with you because I was so doggone good at production. And then I got into the world of casting and I was equally good at casting and I loved them both. And my career was matriculating so well. I was loving my TV and film career when I graduated from college. I worked on the biggest TV shows. I worked with some big name stars. I sat in casting auditions, and I wasn't auditioning. I was the person reading with the actors. But the person sitting next to me were names you've seen on TV that you know that you've watched on films. People that I'm gonna be honest with you. One woman, I'm not gonna say names because it's not about the celebrities, but I want you guys to get this. I remember one woman, I'm just gonna say her name, Debbie Allen. I was working on a movie with Debbie Allen, and she walked in the movie in the casting thing with her fur coat on. I was like, okay, Debbie, I see you. I'm sharing this with you because I didn't realize that what God does, y'all, is He always calls you to bigger. And I couldn't understand how I could get bigger than where I was. So, for many of you, the reason you've been coming to this series is that your current job is no longer big enough for your gift. That means God is saying, I got more work for you to complete. Again, will you complete the work God put you on this earth to do? Some of you feel guilty for wanting more. Like, how can I dare want more when I have everything I've ever wanted, or I have a good paycheck, or et cetera, et cetera? Or anything in between, maybe perceptions in your way. What will people think? By the way, all of those things were things I was thinking of when I began to feel like I love my job, but I felt like something was missing. I couldn't understand how I could feel like something's missing when I'm working on the biggest TV shows, working with big name stars. I'm walking on the red carpet. I'm going to all the Hollywood parties, and I might have dated a star. That's all I'm going to say. So I was living the dream, loved every minute of it. But in the dark of the night, when I was by myself, I started to feel in conflict because I knew there was something bigger, but I couldn't imagine what could it be. And so every time I prayed about it, God was silent. I was like, okay, Lord, I'm asking you, but you ain't saying nothing. If I'm saying anything that's resonating with you, say, Nicole, that's me. Some of you guys, the reason why things aren't happening for you is you're playing small or you're second guessing who God created you to be. Whatever that is for you, I am here for you. So in the middle of COVID, God began to tell me that what I need you to do is make sure people are deployed in their gifts. So in the spring of 2020, so COVID started in March. By I think it was May, I started doing this series. And as I started doing this series, I started studying it more and more. Until now we're 2 years later, and I've learned so much around this that I realized the reason why I'm so passionate about business being important to God is because this is my exact calling. This is the exact thing that God has created me to do. I see you, Alzada. She said, that's me, right? And so I really want you guys to get this. Is the reason why I'm here is two reasons. One, to be living, breathing proof of what is possible when you say yes to the next level of you. So I'm not here for who you already are. There's a whole new level that God is waiting for. Why? Because He needs that gift in you. He put it in you on purpose for purpose. Again, I'm going to say this over and over again. Will you complete it? Will you complete the work that God left incomplete intentionally because He wanted to partner with you to do it? And He chose to do that. But again, He gave you free will. He's not going to make you do it. So as we walk through the culmination of the series, and yes, I'm going to give you 6 steps to complete God's work. 6 steps that you got to do to be able to complete it. I want you to get a couple things before I walk through that. You know, the interesting thing is I was looking up, I don't remember what I was looking up, let me be honest. And this popped out for me. The word vocation. So we talk about work. And so the word vocation, the Latin word is vocare, which actually means to call. And when I say calling, so many people think that calling is only reserved for a minister in a pulpit. But all of us are called. You don't listen. Some of us are called to the pulpit, yes, but some of us are called to the marketplace. Some of us are called to classrooms, to boardrooms, to boutiques. Do I need to keep going or do you get my point? You each are called, and God is waiting for you. He's waiting. Matter of fact, some of y'all, there's a warrant out for your arrest. I said this on another episode. And the angels have been deployed to come and get you. So if you've been feeling guilty about not going after this thing, or you've been feeling this rumble in your soul, this is exactly why, because it's time for you to go after that next version of you. See, for me, in the middle of entertainment, when I was feeling like that, I was praying and God was silent. I didn't know what to do. Now, this was in 1993. I was 23 years old at the time. Okay. And I really want you to understand this, y'all. I couldn't figure it out. But I just kept praying. I kept praying. I kept making my petition known unto God. That's in the Bible. Somebody else kept making their petition known. Let's see who knows that. Some of y'all probably know. So tell me, it's probably Yolanda. Yolanda, tell me who made their petition known. I need you guys to get this. I kept on. I wouldn't stop. Jacob wrestled with God, didn't realize he was wrestling with God. So some of you guys are being comfortable about it. It's not gonna come in comfort, it's not gonna come in ease. And I was desperate about it. So much that I just kept coming at God, like, God, what is up? So I remember one of my good girlfriends called me and said, let's go volunteer one Friday night. And at our church, I'm laughing. I was going to say, I'll take them. That's me for 200, Alex. Right. Hello. Come on. Right. And I know, listen, I want you guys to get this. The way that I'm resonating with many of you is the same way your ideal client will resonate with you. There's no coincidence. This is not by accident or happenstance that you're here. And the reason it's resonating with you is because I'm standing in who God has called me to be. The same way that when you do that, the people that are assigned to you will do the same. So, and I'm back to my story. So, sorry, tangent. So, listen, my good girlfriends called me and said, let's go volunteer at our church one Friday night. And they were having a youth program. And so I walked into that church that night and I started working with teenage girls. As their eyes lit up, my heart lit up. And I said, oh my God, whatever this thing is what I'm meant to do. But there was no such thing as a coach. I didn't know what to call it. It wasn't as glamorous as my daytime job. But for the first time in my life, my soul was alive. So I had a decision to make. I'm sharing that with you because many of you are at that crossroad right now. So for me, what that crossroad looked like in one direction was the only way I knew anybody would ever recognize me. It was perception. It was guilt. It was the job I had dreamed of, that I had written off a list with the kids, with the house and the car and the 2.5 kids. Y'all remember that, right? Some of y'all had that on your list. And in this way, and this side of my direction was this thing that was lighting up my soul, that I didn't know what to call it. So I went after this thing because I knew that was God. Even though I didn't know how to explain it, I had to let go of what anybody else thought. I had to stop caring what other people's judgment would be. Oh, and I got judged, trust and believe. But what I also knew is there's no way I would feel like this if I wasn't meant to go after it. And so here's also what I know. That my journey started there, but God led me on that journey so I can hold the light for you. It's like I've been the Harry Tubman of the Underground Purpose Road. Come on, somebody, that just jumped in my head. So with that said, let's walk through the 6 steps to complete God's work. The 6 steps you got to go through. And listen, I've been talking about this whole series. Before I do that, let me read the Bible verse for this particular conversation, which is, where did it go? Ephesians 2:10. We are God's handiwork, created in Christ Jesus to do good work, which God prepared in advance for us to do. Another one is 1 Corinthians 12, 5 and 6 that says, there are different kinds of service, but the same Lord. There are different kinds of working, but in all of them and in everyone is the same God at work. So again, there's different kinds of working. All of us are meant to do different things. But all of us are God at work. Are we going to peel that back? So, as we talked about in this series, why business is important to God. And listen, this is for you whether you are starting a business or you work a 9 to 5, which means you're working at somebody else's business. And many of you, my ideal client is usually what I call a alongside-er. So that means you're working alongside your 9 to 5 to start your own business. So your business was created as an answer, just like the business you work for was created as an answer. So your role isn't any less significant. So all my corporate ladies that are watching me thinking I don't want to start a business, oh, this is for you too, ladies and fellas. This is equally as much for you because when you get in alignment with God's assignment for your life, your business will flourish, whether it's your business or you're building somebody else's business. Y'all with me? So let's talk about, I'm going to walk through the first 3 steps here, and then you guys know we do part 2. I'll tell you where you watch that, but I also have a gift for you, okay? And I need you to understand that God's will for your life is not separate from your work. It's not. Because as you do the thing God created you to do, you are living out God's will for your life, okay? And some of you aren't even meant to work a job. Maybe you're meant to be a great mom at home and raise your children. That's a job too, y'all. So some of y'all have 2 jobs. You're a mom and you have a 9 to 5. And or you're starting a business. Don't discount what you are called to be. Because being a mother is a calling, because trust, I don't have that calling. Okay. All right. So with that said, let me walk you through the 6 steps. By the way, I'm a phenomenal bonus mom, great auntie, god mom, but yeah, I don't have kids of my own. You know, what's interesting is I remember when I met my husband, and I met my husband at 34, I got married at 37, and perception said that I'm supposed to have a child. Perception says, so when I met my husband, I told him I wanted 3 kids. And then he said, "Are you sure?" And I was like, "Oh my God, he's the first person that gave me permission not to want kids." That's how I felt. And I said, "That's such a good question." I said, "So right now I'm good, but would you be willing to adopt? Because if I do change my mind, I'll probably be too old to birth them myself." And he and I got a good laugh out of that. But what I realized is that God created me to help so many other people with their children. Because my first business, I worked with over 500 teenage girls in 20 years. Those girls are grown women with children of their own. Many of them have master's degrees. Some of them have PhDs. Some of them run their own businesses. And I've been blessed to be a part of their lives and watch them grow. But then God matriculated me from entertainment to do that, to then work with highly skilled professionals like many of you. And I want you to understand that what I've done is been a producer my whole life. My arena has shifted, but my gift has not. God just had to take me out of entertainment to show me how to produce purpose. And that's what I've been doing for the last 28 plus years. So my question to you is, will you complete it? What's the thing? Well, let me walk you through the 6 steps. I'm gonna end up talking about that anyway. So number 1, you've got to abide. Now I talked about this in part 3 when the conversation was stop fighting your GPS. And the reason I talked to you about this in part 3 of this series is because here's what I know for sure. Many of us take for granted our relationship with God. And when you're abiding and spending time and getting to know God, what happens is if God made each of us in his image, each of us is a part of his image. The more you get to know that piece of you, so obviously God's a producer because I'm that piece of God. Just like there's a piece of you, that's a piece of God. None of us is all of what God is, but all of us are pieces of his image. Y'all get that? So what I want to read here is Colossians. Now, in part 3, the conversation I had with you when I did part 3 in this series, again, that episode was called Stop Fighting Your GPS. I read to you John 15:5, but I got another Bible verse. I'm going to dig deeper for you, okay? So that Bible verse, again, if you missed that episode, go back and listen. Again, it's fpppodcast.com. And again, start with why business is important to God and follow all the breadcrumbs to get to this episode, okay? So that episode was part 3. I'm not going to do these numbers. By the way, these steps are not going to be in order of the episodes. Why? Because I want you to get how I've been pouring into you so you understand how all the parts come to play. I've been putting together the puzzle for you. So here's where we pull all the pieces together. Okay. So in that episode, which is called Stop Fighting Your GPS, John 15:5 is a Bible verse I read in that episode. And that Bible verse says, "I am the vine, you are the branches. He who abides in me and I in him bears fruit. For without me, you can do nothing." And see, ultimately, us doing the work we do is about bearing fruit, which is producing good results, right? So listen, here's another way to look at this conversation around abide. It's Colossians 3, 1 and 2. If then you were raised with Christ, seek those things which are above, where Christ is, sitting at the right hand of God. Set your mind on the things above, not things on the earth. So y'all know I looked this up in Tony Evans, my favorite study Bible. So here's what it says under Colossians 3, 1 and 2. I don't ever read all of it. I read parts of it, okay? So because listen, it's this long. I know y'all don't want me to be reading that long on here, right? So I read parts of it. If you have bad habits and you can't control, you have a mind problem. Now, let me stop with that. See, for me, what I know for sure, that mind problem is where perception lives, guilty lives, fear lives. Do I need to keep going? So anything that's coming up for you, playing small, that's a mind problem. So first thing I want to encourage you to check yourself and see where you have a mind problem. And those of you that are going to say you don't have a mind problem, then yeah, let me check that you're in denial. Because all of us have some level of mind problem. As long as we're in this flesh, we're going to be battling with our mind. Because that's where the enemy comes to steal, kill, and destroy. He drops stuff in your spirit and your mind to throw you off path. Okay? So then he goes on to say, actions originate in the thinking. You may assume you can just break your bad habits, but you must begin to pry it loose in your mind. If there's no change to how you think, there will be no substantive change in how you live. So when you begin to look at abiding, if I use myself for an example, when God first told me to start this program for teenage girls at my church, and I worked in entertainment, let me tell you, my Friday nights were sleepovers. When you work in entertainment, Friday nights are party nights. And so a lot of my friends were like, you going where? So I really had to work on my mindset around all the things people were throwing at me. And when I did go out during the week, because part of being in entertainment, you almost have to go out to network. I'd have a drink in my hand and somebody go, oh, okay, church girl, you have a drink. I'm like, but I'm not drunk. Look, if Jesus made water into wine, why can't I have a drink in my hand? You ain't gonna see me throwing up at a party because that's not who I be. Because the Bible also says don't do anything in excess. It doesn't say don't drink. It says don't get drunk. So I had to really hold my own mind and stop letting other people control it, which was me. I grew up in an abusive household, y'all. So it was a whole control spirit over me. I had to do the work to get it off of me. Okay. So Romans 12:2 says, and do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. Again, it says, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Renewing is an ongoing process. You don't renew one time and done. It's like our skin renews. Whew, and I go to the esthetician once a month to make sure I'm renewing my skin the right way. Even our bodies renew or level set every day. I've had to learn a new level of level setting my body because I'm in menopause. Come on, somebody, perimenopause. I'm not all the way in it yet. So I've had to learn a new way to level set my body. So if I got to do my body like that and my skin like that, and I can go through all kind of things, my hair, we got to trim our hair because we get split ends. We got to renew. So if all that has to be renewed, what makes you think your mind doesn't have to be renewed? Especially if God is going to cause you to play bigger than you've ever played before, you're going to be scared. If it's bigger, matter of fact, Ayanna Van Zant said once on a mastermind call I was on, if what you're doing doesn't scare you, doesn't make you want to pee on yourself sometimes, you ain't playing big enough. But you're staying safe. You're worried about what other people are going to think and other people are going to say. God does not work in that. He's not checking any of that. He's not checking if you're going to be afraid of what other people are going to say. That's why you got to renew your mind. When you abide in God and get to know him more and more, it helps you to renew your mind. It gives you tools. Okay, so that's step one is abide. So every time I say a step, I really want to encourage you to check where you are in your level of abide. One of the things that I do, and if this helps you, is whatever area I'm working on, I buy a spiritual book on that subject. There used to be a spiritual book club called Crossings. I don't know if it still exists, but I used to get spiritual books. Like I was a member. I used to get like 3 or 4 books a month. I used to like inhale those books. This is probably about 20 years ago. Now what I do is I Google and I have favorite authors. Joyce Meyer is a favorite. T.D. Jakes is a favorite. Who else is a favorite? I have all kind of favorites. Let me stop trying to say them off the top of my mind because I won't remember all the different authors that I read. But I want you to get this. Find what will help you in that area. Sometimes it might mean that you need to go to counseling because you're stuck in something and you can't see it. If you are having an issue with renewing your mind, that means there's something on top of that area that you can't fight off by yourself. Oh, and the enemy's gonna keep it on there. Oh, he's gonna try his hardest to keep it on there. I remember when I finally come to terms with the fact that my father was abusive. The interesting thing is I didn't know my father as that person because he treated me like a queen, like a princess, like a doll. But how he treated my mother was something totally different. And what I realized is my father was a flawed man, just like I'm a flawed woman. All of us have flaws. And I remember talking to my dad about it. I had to so I could process it. But I went to counseling first before I could have that conversation with my dad. And the same thing, I had to do the same thing with my mom. Hardest conversations I've had in my life, but I'm going to tell you, those things relieved me and broke me free. And I remember being on the stage and my mom was in the room and telling the story of having to let go of the abusive spirit that was on me. You guys realize, those of you that are in abusive relationships, you know that your children will have the abusive spirit on them. You got to renew, even for your children, help them renew. I ain't going to a whole conversation about that. But if you're going to abide and be God's image, you've got to let go and shift anything that's not in alignment with it. You've got to do that work. God's not going to do that for you. So that's number one. Okay. And again, I went deeper into that in part three, which is that part three was called Stop Biting Your GPS. The second part of that GPS, which is number two, is let go of your plans. I said it, let go of your plans. See, the GPS has two things. One is about abiding. The second thing is following God's direction, submitting to God. Now, many times when I was doing this study, especially back in the day, my uh, independent woman self, submission is a word that we all run from. Come on, what other independent women do I have in the room? And any man that's ever dealt with an independent woman, you said that S word, and they were like, "What?" So realize that submission is getting under God's mission. Even getting married, can I keep it real with you? A husband and wife should get under the same mission. Doesn't mean I'm under my husband's mission any more than he's under mine. We get under one mission. Okay? When you're not under one mission in a marriage, it doesn't work. When you're not under one mission in a business, it doesn't work. Well, when you're not under God's mission, baby, you won't work. So when you stop, let go of your own plans. So for me, when I was working in entertainment and when I started feeling this great awakening happening in me, I had to let go of everything that I thought I knew because I was only looking at things from a lens of what I knew. Little South Central LA Nicole. Little Nicole, they used to watch A Different World. Watching A Different World. How many of y'all watched that show back in the day? Is what made me want to go to college. It showed me that there was other things possible for me. And then my mentor at 12, who was studying to go to law school, I'd never seen anybody that looked like me that had gone to college, let alone law school. They gave me hope. And I love TV and film. And so that's why I chose that field. In addition to, I was a little producer when I was little. But I'm saying that because that was my narrow vision that chose that for myself. God always has bigger plans for you. So your plans are great, but God's are always going to be bigger. And you've got to get under his mission if you're going to get in alignment with why God put you here in the first place. So I just read to you Romans 12:2. I'm going to read 12:1 and 2. Romans 12:1 and 2. I appeal to you, therefore, brothers and sisters, since I see it's mostly women here tonight, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, which is your spiritual worship. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. I already read that part. But here's the thing that's interesting, y'all. It says, present your bodies as a living sacrifice. When you do the work God's called you to do, that's how you're giving God worship, y'all. You're presenting your body as a living sacrifice to God and his will, not your will. Okay. Number 3 is pay attention to how God wired you. Pay attention to it. I think for me, I spent so much time paying attention to what the world said I should do or be. I paid so much attention to the list I had written out for my career, and I didn't pay attention to how I was wired. When I began to see it, it's interesting. My husband's cousins were here this weekend, and we were talking about what I do, and and I'm not gonna say names, but my husband's cousin's husband, the husband cousin, was sharing. She was sharing that he's a consultant, and then I listed, and as she was saying what he does, I said, well, you could do this, and you could do this, and you could do this. She looked at me. I said, oh, that's how I'm wired. I can see money on the table. And it's not just money on the table, it's all the transformation you're leaving behind. Because I told her the way he's working, he can only work with one person at a time. The way I just gave him, he can work with millions of people at a time. And she's looked at me. I said, oh, he's leaving so much transformation behind. But that's how I'm wired, y'all. It took me to start understanding and spending time. The more I spent time with God, the more I began to see myself. Does that make sense? So I want to read to you. This is a short Bible verse, probably the shortest one I've ever read. Ephesians 5:1. Therefore, be imitators of God as dear children. That's it. Now it goes on and says more than that, but that's what I want you to get. Therefore, be imitators of God as dear children. Now, I talked about this two parts. I talked about this in week 2 when I talked about there being a relay, because what God relays to us. Think about what a relay race is, and God gives us the baton as His children to be in His image. The second thing I talked about last week is we are a masterpiece in the making. God didn't use a cookie cutter. He didn't put us on an assembly line. He made us each different, special, unique. So under Ephesians 5:1, here's what it says in my phenomenal Tony Evans Bible commentary. Be imitators of God as dearly loved children. And the light of who we are in Christ, we are called to imitate God as a child often mimics the characteristics and behaviors of a parent. The other thing I want to bring to your attention, it doesn't say mimic the behaviors of this world, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. It doesn't say mimic the behaviors of other people that are doing what you do in your marketplace. It doesn't say mimic the behaviors of other business owners. It says mimic the behaviors of God. And what's interesting is when you begin to mimic the behaviors of God that's in alignment with your DNA, that's your distinct natural ability that God placed in you at birth, y'all. That's where His image starts to come through and flourish. So those are the first 3 parts. Number 1, you got to abide and we spend time and get to know God. So you get to know how He created you and get to know Him, period. Number 2, you got to let go of your plans. And number 3, you've got to pay attention to how God wired you. Now, we're going to go deeper, but here's the other thing. This is the last part of this series. So I actually have a gift for you. So because I wanted to really walk you through how to take everything I've taught you in the last 7 weeks, 6.5, understand how to begin a business, I invited 18 other power players to join me to give you an insider look as to how you get rich in your niche. Now, y'all know when I say rich, first of all, when I say profit, the word means gain. Rich really means a high value. So when you're giving God a gain, a high value back to God, oh, He wants you to bring riches into the kingdom, because that means you can work with more people and do more good. But then also He's going to bless you so that you can be a blessing. So I'm going to invite you into something special I'm doing next week. I'm going to show you a quick commercial, and then I'll come back and wrap up this episode and prepare for part 2. Here we go. So make sure you grab your seat. We will start that next Monday. 5 days of pouring into you. Of course, I'm going to teach you all along the way, give you strategy. So it starts next Monday, 8 p.m. So yes, I'll be here next Monday, 7 o'clock. I'll start it here. And then we will continue all week long. We will go in Clubhouse the day after to have recaps. I have so much. Plus, I have a workbook for you. And the reason I'm giving you all of this is because I really want you to get this. God has so much for you. But it's going to take you completing the mission that he put you on this earth to do. You know, I often call myself Jasmine Bond, like I'm a 007 agent. And when God gave me my mission, I took it seriously. That's why I do all of this that I do. So I've gone over time. Usually like to be here for 30 minutes. So I want to thank you, Al Zeta. Grandma keeps saying your name so I can say it right. Etta. By the way, both of you guys are in FPP circle. So I'll see you on our prayer call in a few. Yolanda and Renata. And who else do I see that's here? Roslyn and Kim. Hey, girl. And Coach Vayanzi, please tell me if I'm saying it right. Vu Yanzi, girl, thank you. Here from New Jersey. I'm glad you spelled it out right. Spelled it out, not spelled it out right. Spelled it out for me. Thank you all for joining me live. I appreciate you. And then I'm going to invite you to join me tomorrow morning. So we do part 2 in Clubhouse. And let me tell you why. So the first 15 minutes, I pour into you the last 3 steps. Then Yolanda, my partner in transformation, I hate to say crime, comes in and shares her insight. She's here with us tonight. And then I want to hear from you. Questions, thoughts. When I walk you through the last 3, whether it's one of these first 3 areas or the next 3 that you're stuck in, that you're having issue with, that you need support in, I want to support you. So bring your questions live tomorrow morning to Clubhouse. And if you're not on Clubhouse, if you go to fppbreakfast.com, that actually gives you an invitation to join Clubhouse. All right. So with that said, thank you for joining me for this episode of FPP Live. I don't take your joining me for granted. And I look forward to pouring more into you tomorrow morning. All right. So with that, take care. I'll see many of you in the morning. Bye.